You are listening to the Pens Nation radio show on thepensnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at @thepensnation.
The NHL trade deadline comes to an end Wednesday at 3 p.m. and there's potentially, Mish, a decent group of players on this list. Guys like, we already know, like guys like Thomas Vanek, likely is not going to resign in New York with the Islanders. Matt Molson also on this list, Ryan Kesler, Andrew McDonald, Alice Hemsky, who I know a lot of Pens fans have been salivating for years over. This is shaping up to be kind of a special trade deadline, and it's kind of hard to get a read on where some of these guys are going. We've already seen one blockbuster with Ryan Miller going from Buffalo to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for just a plethora of guys right now. I'm not even going to list off a bunch of the names, but Halak and Stewart are the big two out of that coming from St. Louis. And it looks like both those guys are going to be added to that list as well of guys that are going to be shipped out to another team. Halak hasn't even started a game yet for the Buffalo Sabres. It's the Pens Nation radio show. I'm Nick. You can follow the show on Twitter at the Pens Nation, all one word there. You can follow me, PensNation_Nick, and you can follow Mish at Hockey Mish. All there on the Twitter machine. Get a hold of us throughout the show. At the end of the show, we'll be playing Armchair GM. We'll be reading off your tweets about who you would kind of like to see on this team and what you would do with the Penguins roster, and we'll kind of read those up at the end of the show tonight. But Mish, getting into Penguins-related news, just coming out of the Winter Classic, the Stadium Series. It feels like the Winter Classic because it was snowing and it was a snow globe kind of atmosphere. It felt like Buffalo all over again, didn't it?
Yeah, you know what? Buffalo wasn't as windy, though, and it wasn't as cold. My takeaway from that game, and of course, the Penguins actually won in Buffalo, so that was nice to see. They actually seemed to try in Buffalo. My takeaway from the Stadium Series game was I don't want to do any more Stadium Series games or outdoor games, or whatever you want to call them.
Why?
I was really excited for Penguins-Hawks. Everyone was really excited for Penguins-Hawks. But when you get to see two of the best teams in the NHL, and the quality of hockey isn't great as there's snow all over the ground, and I know Jonathan Toews still looked amazing because he always does, but for the majority of players, they didn't play at the top of their game, and it's just, why waste a matchup between these two teams in the regular season when you aren't going to get what you want out of it hockey-wise?
I mean, yeah, I could see that point, but I mean, as far as revenue and hockey-related revenue stuff goes, giant cash cow, and I can't see any reason why the NHL would end up stopping these kind of games because they are such a novelty that fans still love to go to it. Like LA, I mean, they get their first kind of outdoor game and they run out of beer by the end of the first period. So fans are kind of rabid for it, and it's just a giant cash cow. What was it? Over 300-some thousand attended the 6 Stadium Series games. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I think there should still be outdoor games. I do the Stadium Series every year for all I care. I just want the Penguins to take a little break from them.
Yeah, I mean, if you get the same teams within there too many times, it just kind of feels kind of overdone. The novelty kind of wears off for those fans. Although, I kind of heard somewhere today that the Penguins were looking at potentially doing one at PNC Park. I think that would be a very cool place to do one. I would like that probably a little better than Heinz Field. It's just kind of way more scenic, and it's a much better park, actually, to kind of host something like that in. But we'll see. Hopefully,
I guess the thing for me is I'm kind of disappointed it was a marquee matchup that was used in this game, because I honestly feel like fans would fill up the stadium for just about anything at this point, because there are still enough people who haven't gone to an outdoor game that they still want to go to an outdoor game. But Pens Blackhawks, I want to see where both teams match up against each other under normal conditions. If it's Pens Panthers, I don't care where the game is played. Do whatever anyone wants to do.
Would that whole opinion on how that game kind of played out, would that have changed if the Pens would have won that game? Probably
I don't think so, because even looking back at Buffalo, looking back at the Washington outdoor game, it's never been great hockey, no matter how you look at it. And at least with Buffalo, it was the first one, and it had that novelty feel to it. At this point, I almost want bad matchups in those games just because I don't care about quality of hockey at that point.
Interesting point there.
Yeah.
But it is cool, though.
It's a very random thing you won't hear a lot, but if it's two quality hockey teams, I want to watch quality hockey.
Yeah, at the same time, it's so easy to market to quality hockey teams because, you got all that star power, and I think the NHL is really banking on that with this Stadium Series game. Kane, Taves, you have Gino and Sid there, and it's just as much star caliber as there's ever been, I think, on an outdoor game. And, man, the Pens just didn't seem to show up for that game. They just seemed to want to play the same style of game that they play indoors, and you couldn't really do that there, could you?
No, and they refused to keep it simple, and you especially saw it on the first couple of power plays they had. It wasn't a matter of getting the puck to the net. They still wanted to work it around and make it pretty, which you couldn't do in those conditions, especially in the first period when there was so much snow piling up. Well, I DVR'd it. I still have to watch it on TV so I can do the thoughts post, which I'll have up in the morning. But
you're gonna throw
I imagine I'm not going to be able to take away a lot from it.
No, it was a pretty rough game, I think, for the Pens-wise. Not only did they try to do the pretty stuff within their own offensive zone, but they did the same thing that they typically do in the kind of the neutral zone, like those big, long passes, and it just wasn't going to work, and they never really simplified their game. Chicago, they figured it out pretty quick, and they simplified, and you saw how effective they ended up becoming, and the Penguins just never could really get kind of their bearings straight, and it showed. I know it's just one game, and I know it's just 2 points, but did this game in any way indicate where the Penguins are within the NHL? Do they stack up remotely even close to the Chicago Blackhawks? They've got one of the deeper rosters the Blackhawks do in the entire NHL, maybe the deepest, but at some point it would have been great to see these guys kind of within just a regular arena. But from seeing what you saw this past Saturday night, do they stack up? Are they even that close?
See, that's where my frustration is from having the outdoor game between these two teams. I honestly don't know, and I'm not going to give you an answer because I have no clue at all. For all we know, the Penguins come out much, much better indoors and can actually stay with Chicago in a game. But we have no clue because of the outdoor game. And just coming off of the whole Olympic break and everything, we saw a very messy game against Montreal where everyone was rusty. And going outdoors certainly didn't help that. So, the team still looked like a mess against Chicago. Do they match up with them? Probably not, because Chicago has far more depth than, pretty much every other team in the NHL. But I don't know how far away the Penguins are from that because I'm not going to use that game as a measuring point.
Hey, let's use the entire season thus far. They've got a huge lead in the Metro Division. They're one of the best teams in the East. It's basically them in Boston. Let's do a little ranking game here between the Penguins and some other teams, just based off of what we've seen all year. Pittsburgh, Chicago, over the year, not what we saw Saturday night.
I definitely put Chicago ahead of them.
Okay.
Maybe by like a half step, quarter step, somewhere along those lines.
Okay. Pittsburgh and Anaheim.
I'm still putting Anaheim ahead of Chicago now if you're going body of work. So Anaheim's going ahead of Pittsburgh for that reason.
San Jose or Pittsburgh?
Probably about even. I think I would trust Pittsburgh a little more than San Jose. So I guess I'll give Pittsburgh a little bit of an edge there.
All right, what about St. Louis in Pittsburgh?
St. Louis go ahead of Pittsburgh. No question for me on that.
Before or after Miller? Where did they rank? Actually, where did they rank before?
Before it would have been ahead of Pittsburgh, and after even further ahead of Pittsburgh.
That's the scariest team out west to me right now too, and they've made the moves that they've needed necessary to make, and they just are one of those teams that will give the Pens fits if they ever have to play them in the playoffs. Perfectly built for playoffs unless they run into the Kings. Pittsburgh and Boston.
I know the standings say Pittsburgh's better, but I just like Boston's depth better. I like Tuukka Rask better. I would still pick Boston.
So pretty much everybody over Pittsburgh. I mean, I think you had San Jose, even?
Just about even. I'd probably give Pittsburgh an edge there.
So, for a team that boasts probably the two best players in the entire NHL, they're probably about 5th or 6th on your list there. That's pretty alarming in a way. And what do they got to do right now to kind of fix that? Because they've got the pieces in place to make a decent run, but there's a lot of holes, and we've talked about it a lot on the show. But there's a ton of holes on this roster, especially bottom 6. It's atrocious. And if you haven't had the chance to check out what Mike Darnay tweeted, maybe about 10 minutes before the show, I retweeted it earlier too. It is staggering to see kind of how bad this team is. He tweeted a great graph of it. Go check it out. If you don't follow him, go follow him at Mike Darnay. But it's disgusting, and it makes you want to throw up.
And that's the issue. That's honestly why I pick every single one of these teams above Pittsburgh. It's just third and fourth lines. What are you getting from other teams, and what are you getting from the Penguins? You aren't getting anything from the Penguins. At best, those third and fourth liners are role players. Maybe like Craig Adams, for instance, you have him specifically for penalty kill, and inherently he takes a regular shift. But that's best case scenario for the bottom 6 right now. Worst case scenario is look at the Montreal game. The penalty kill was bad. The bottom 6 didn't do anything. It just turns into a worthless group of players.
Yeah, it's one of those things where this is it. I mean, either this season is about to be a waste if nothing happens, or we're going to see a completely different kind of roster here in the next 2.5 days. Now, so all the rumors have been pointing that the Pens are in big time for Ryan Kesler out of Vancouver, and they're not likely going to bring him in to play right wing with Sid. They're likely going to bring him in to center that third line. That, in and of itself, not enough to fix this bottom 6. Ryan Kesler is great. He's gifted. He's gritty, and he's got scoring touch. He could kind of play any style of game, but it's still not enough to fix that bottom 6. There's some other issues there, isn't there?
One of the things with depth is you need more than one guy to fix depth. And Kesler would come in. He would take Sutter's place. So, there's no question Kesler is an upgrade on Sutter. No one's going to question that at all. It would re-fulfill the 3-center model, as everyone's talked about. It would be an upgrade on what Jordan Staal was. Ryan Kesler is a pretty fantastic player, but who's he playing with? He still has no wings to play with, and the fourth line is still not helpful either. It takes way more than one player to add depth, and so, the whole Kesler thing to me, and Mike Colligan actually made this point in an article today, it's more for the future than it is for this year, and I love it for the future, but I have a hard time getting excited about it because I don't care about it for this year.
See, that's the part of me that does get excited. This year specifically, because that's an issue they need to address bottom 6-wise now. We've got Crosby and Malkin in their primes, and you can't waste one of these years. It's so difficult to make deep runs. So in order for that to happen, they need to take action now. And it just so happens, it's nice because it kind of benefits on the back end of things too. You have him for another year, 2 years actually, after that. If you look at, if he were the only player coming in right now, it doesn't completely fix the bottom 6, but it does revamp it a bit. You potentially could put Jason Magna on that line with him, and might not be a giant disaster, but you don't really know what you got there. Bo Bennett, hopefully, knock on wood, will be healthy enough, and you could actually slot Bo Bennett and Jason Magna there, and all of a sudden that third line looks much different, and it's got some scoring touch, and it's got some grit, and it's got plenty of speed. What do you think about that?
Theoretically, it sounds fantastic. Theoretically, it is great. Bo Bennett, however, has shown no ability to stay healthy, and also, I still don't even know what to think of Bo Bennett because we haven't seen him in the lineup consistently for any period of time. I still don't know if he's big enough to play in the NHL yet or if he's going to get knocked around and get hurt again. I don't want to trust Bo Bennett right now. Magna, I feel a little bit better about just because we've seen him a little more. But, he's still a guy who has to bulk up as well. So, I don't know if I really trust him long-term either, at least in the third-line role. And, I mean, it's still a lack of depth. And so here's a question for you. Forget the contract situations and how much they would cost to acquire. Ryan Kesler, let's say you're acquiring Ryan Kesler or you're going to acquire Matt Molson. Kesler costs you Sutter. Molson does not cost you Sutter. Which trade would you feel better about?
I'm assuming you got Molson on the top line with Sid.
At least, yeah.
I'm not as excited about Matt Molson, honestly. I'm way more excited about a guy like Ryan Kesler because you got some contract flexibility there.
Well, forget the contract flexibility. I'm saying, like, for this year, basically what I'm saying is keep Sutter and add Molson so you're bumping Givens down to the third line, or trade Sutter away, acquire Kesler, but you're still running pretty much no right wings ever.
I'm not super excited about Matt Molson, and here's why. Like, when he's on his game, he's a really decent player. I'd probably give him a B+. But when he's not on his game, he's the most invisible guy on the ice. I mean, you don't notice him ever. So if he's not kind of in your goalie's face, potting goals, what good is he, honestly? How much better? I mean, how much better did he make like Buffalo? Not much better.
Well, I mean, I agree with you to a degree, but at the same time, he would be next to Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, I mean,
that tends to make a decent difference.
I would hope so, but I mean, has it made much of a difference in a guy like Gibbons or Megna or
Are you really going to compare Molson's talent to any of the other guys there?
Yeah, I am.
I think that's crazy.
I think Molson's better. At the same time, I'm not so sure it's that easy to play with Sidney Crosby.
No, it's not. But the thing is, like, you'd be adding. Basically, my whole point in this is I'd rather see winger depth, and Molson is miles ahead of Gibbons. No one can give themselves on that. Not that I'm saying go after Molson, but my point is I would much rather see wingers come in.
What do you think the actual asking price for a guy like Matt Molson would be, though?
Oh, way too much. I don't want Molson specifically. That's why I trimmed down that whole hypothetical, because Molson's probably going to cost 2 picks and a prospect, if not more than that, which will be insane. And he's a rental. So, I mean, Molson's not worth it, and I'm not saying actually go after Molson, but just in general, I'd rather see a winger. Okay, forget Molson. I'd rather see Nikolai Kulemin in. Pennsburg had a post about that today.
Yeah.
I would love to see Kulemin in. He can play PK. He's familiar with Malkin, obviously. You could drop Jokinen down to the third line. That gives you depth there, or you can even throw Jokinen on Sid's line if you want to try that out. But I want to see this team get deeper.
Oh, I mean, there's no question about it. It has to get deeper.
Deeper without giving away an NHL asset, basically, like giving away Sutter would be for Kesler. I want to see... What I see with giving away Sutter for Kesler is you have the same amount of spots filled depth-wise. I want to see a player come in that's not taking away, that's not just an even out. I want to see an addition to the depth.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, you need to free up some cap space in order to kind of get some of those guys. So it's kind of a weird balance, it's a weird dance, and it's going to be one of those things where I think Shearer is going to kind of sit back and wait to see how the chips are starting to fall out, see what the asking price actually is for some of these guys, and then he'll make a move. But yeah, Kulemin, that's an interesting discussion, actually. He's been kind of rumored to be a target for quite a while, especially to play with a guy like Evgeny Malkin. They could actually have a decent amount of chemistry together, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they played in Magnitogorsk together, and Kulemin does a lot of the things that this team could use. He's solid defensively. Obviously, the chemistry is already there. He's a little hot and cold scoring at times, and I mean, I wouldn't necessarily trust him to score a goal when we needed it the most, but he doesn't really have to if he ends up on that second line. He's more there just to round out the line, pretty much. I mean, I'd be happy picking him up. I have no clue what the price is. I don't really understand prices right now because there are so many buyers and so few sellers, but at the same time, some of the buyers seem to have names out there that they're willing to sell, so I don't really know what to make of this trade deadline at this point. Yeah,
it's a mixed bag for sure, but there's going to be a ton of excitement Wednesday, and people are going to be locked into TSN and Twitter, and there's going to be a bunch of stupid reports out there that, Malkin got traded to LA or whatever. But
yeah, make sure you block your fake accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. Just start it now. Like look at your accounts that you follow. Make sure it's like a guy like Mackenzie, and that is the actual Mackenzie, and that you're getting the right information. Drager, guys like that are very trustworthy. Just don't fall for, if you're that guy that falls for the pick, just don't be that guy. All right. One name that has been interesting for a lot of Pens fans for a while. I know Ken loves this guy, Ales Hemsky. People have been clamoring for him to be Pittsburgh Penguin for some time now. He's 30 years old now. He's kind of in a decline on a very bad Edmonton Oilers team. And it's looking like the going rate for a guy like him would be a third-line guy. This seems to be the perfect kind of guy about, the kind of guy that you're talking about right now. Like, you don't have to give up NHL depth for him, but you could get him for a pick. Does he fit here?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much exactly the type of guy I would want. Just add wing depth. I mean, I wouldn't have extremely high expectations for him, honestly, but I think it would boost the team overall. And I mean, that's kind of, if I was Shiro, that's what I would be looking for. That type of player where you don't need him to come make an impact on his own necessarily, because you have guys for that. You have Malkin, Crosby, Kunitz, Neil, Jokinen. Like, the Stars are playing well. There's no issue there. Mm-hmm. The problem is just there's no support around them or behind them when they're off for a shift. So, I mean, if Hemsky could just get on the ice, keep a shift in the offensive zone, and get off the ice, that's good enough for me. That's all I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, there's not a lot that you need to do on that other side. Like, you got Kunitz and Sid. They're more than capable enough to carry that line, and they have all year in the absence of Dupuis. And actually, when Dupuis was here, they were basically carrying that line because he's kind of had a rough start of the season, and once he started to get kind of warmed up, we haven't seen him because he's been injured now, but they've been carrying that line the whole year. They just need someone that you could plug in there. Like you said, just stay in the offensive zone, and open up space for the other two guys and let them do their thing. Hemsky could do that. I'm not so sold on the fact that he could be a Penguin playing in Dan Bausma's system. He doesn't seem to have that kind of edge to him in a way, like where he has a little bit of grit to him to kind of make that happen. But, a lot of guys really love the skill set that he does have. He's a puck possession guy, and which is good because the Pens don't have a lot of that, especially in their bottom six, but they don't have a lot of that kind of player. But I'm not so sold on the fact that he could fit into the system.
Yeah, I generally agree with you on that. Honestly, looking through roster after roster, I'm struggling to find a player that I really, really like for this deadline that's going to cost an appropriate amount and actually fit the system well. It's just, it's the whole reason that Shiro went all in last year on Iginla and Morrow and everyone, because everyone knew this year was with a reduced cap and just the contract situations all over the place. Mm-hmm. This year wasn't going to be a promising year necessarily, and I think we're all seeing that as we look up everything. No matter who you talk about, there's a downside. It's impossible to discuss a player in a possible trade without a downside. We got spoiled last year because everything was just pure upside, and now we don't see any of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of other guys on this list of potential, the Pens have been rumored on pretty much everybody the past couple of days. Brad Boyes from the Panthers down there in Florida is looking like he's probably going to re-sign. He would have been a great fit on that top line with Crosby. Our friends down at Panther Parkway have been clamoring for that to happen for some time. If he was going to go anywhere, they would love to see him go to Pittsburgh because $1 million, I think, for his cap hit. So cheap, and he's actually a decent player, and he could probably keep up with Sid. Who are some of the other guys on here? Chris Stewart has been rumored. This is probably going to cost way too much, and he takes kind of too many bad penalties. You're right.
I have issues with Stewart just because he's streaky. He can, the same way you were talking about Molson earlier, Stewart can show up for 2 weeks and then disappear for a month, and it's not the type of player I'm looking for.
No, absolutely not, especially in a kind of elimination round. That's kind of why I like Ryan Kesler, because his game is just so consistent for the most part. Like he's not up and down. He's pretty just straightforward, and he's different in the fact that every other guy in this locker room seems to be way comfortable with each other. He'd be the outsider, kind of has enough kind of experience under his belt that he wouldn't be afraid to kind of speak up, or get lost. He seems like he could be okay with being the bad guy a little bit and rubbing some people the wrong way. And I don't think that's a bad thing right now.
If that's what he would bring, I mean, that would actually help me along in saying I would want Kesler. But at the same time, look at the rumors that say that he got in tight with Shiro and Basma with Team USA, and so that's why it seems like a better idea. Like, for all we know, he's halfway into that country club already, if you want to use that terminology.
It certainly does feel like that. That's for sure. All right. Let's see. What else? Who else, I guess, would you like to see here? I mean, Mike Camilleri, another guy that's got, some upside to him, but another negative side. I mean, he's not the biggest player. He does perform well in the playoffs whenever he's been in them. He's close with Jacques Martin, like the Pens blog said earlier today. But he's a little small, and he's not kind of a great two-way player, I don't think.
He'll adapt. So, I mean, I'd be happy with that. I just don't see him coming here, honestly. I think he's going to cost too much. I think he would definitely walk at the end of the year. So for that reason, I mean, I can't see Shiro ponying up for a rental like that.
What about a guy like Drew Stafford out of Buffalo?
What is Stafford's contract status? Because I do not know that off the top of my head.
I think he signed to the end of next year. I think it's $4 million a year. And that could plug right in here easily, I think, right now. He's got 10 goals, 14 assists on a pretty bad Buffalo team. I don't think he would cost a ton.
I mean, I like Stafford as a player. I would see potential there. I don't know what Buffalo's asking price would be. To be honest, I'm just not well versed on what to say here.
I'm assuming that they would want to keep a guy like that, but if you can get Drew Stafford for a second-round pick, why not?
We gave up 2 second-rounders for Douglas Murray. If any player costs a second-round pick, I say do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what confuses me with the Hemsky thing. Really, a third-round pick? To me, 20 teams would have made that offer by now. I can't imagine it's actually only a third-round pick for him.
Yeah, he's also got injury issues. And
it's a third-round pick, though. Think about how much those get thrown around.
Yeah.
Dominic Moore gets a second-round pick every year.
We should trade for Dominic Moore.
Hey, he would add depth. You know what? He'd be a great fourth-line D guy, or depth guy, so...
He would be.
I would not be opposed to that.
Well, the Pens did make a roster move today. They placed Chuck Kobasew on waivers, freeing up really minimal space here, but a lot of Pens fans were thinking it's a precursor for something bigger. Freeing up
big
a roster
Jason
spot.
Megna call-up, perhaps.
A who?
I said a big Jason Megna call-up, perhaps.
Yeah, one of those. I mean, who knows? Really, I mean, it does provide them some flexibility. Colligan was on last Thursday, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to that show, absolutely listen to it. Tons of great insight. It's talking about waiving guys like Taylor Pyatt. You have the opportunity to free up some extra space, and also within your trade, you have the opportunity to ship some salary over. So the Penguins could easily fit a $4 or $5 million contract here. Chuck Kobasew, while he wasn't making a ton of money, I mean, you throw him in on waivers and you kind of free yourself up from that contract a bit. If he gets plucked off of waivers, the Pens are on the hook for half of it, right?
I thought that was abolished with the new CBA.
Oh, yeah. I'm living in 2012 still.
Yeah, you're a little behind.
It's wheeling, baby. That's how we roll here. We're about 2 years behind the rest of the universe.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So Kobasew placed on waivers earlier. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Like I said, Wednesday, 3 p.m. is when the trade deadline closes. There are some trades that kind of trickle out after that 3 p.m. deadline. But, I mean, usually those trades get to the desk right at 3, and then you kind of have them leak out a little bit after. So it's going to be a pretty intense next couple of days. It's already been an intense, 4 or 5 days here on Kesler watch, and I'm not so sure that it's really going to pan out, but I'm pretty convinced that Shiro is planning on doing something, because current roster as we see it right now likely isn't enough to get to where they need to go this year. And, it's, in my opinion, it's cup or bust. And I think that's their opinion too. But are they willing to kind of make the moves necessary to make that happen? I think they are.
One thing that worries me about Chiro is he just in the mindset and in the routine that he's going to give up stuff no matter what to make the team better, which isn't an awful thing for a GM to do, obviously, but at the same time, is he going to give up more than necessary / more than he should just because it's become such a routine, such a demand / requirement / whatever you want to call it? I'm kind of worried about how much he's going to give away in this deadline to try and improve the team.
Yeah, and what we've seen over the past couple of years, scouting-wise, draft-wise, hasn't been great. The picks that they have had, they've not done very much with. And so at some point, you keep trading away assets, you're going to get burnt down the line. And I know you can't play completely for the future. You got to play for now because you got guys in their primes. But, man, if you keep spinning off guys year after year for rentals or something like that, it's not a good thing for them to do. And I think that's starting to kind of happen here in Pittsburgh. And I think, 2 or 3 years, we could really feel the effects of that. Luckily, we've got guys here like Malkin and Sid who have signed on kind of, team-friendly contracts. But at the same time, you look at what they've done in Chicago, much less salary cap hit for Taves and Kane than Sid and Gino. And they've built quite the team around that. And I think, and they've done a much better job drafting and finding guys that would fit their system. Pittsburgh has not done a great job at that, and thus you see guys like, and this is no slight on guys like Jason Magna or Brian Gibbons, because they're very serviceable guys, but you can't say that they are top 6 material in any way. And I think you can say that about a lot of guys on a lot of other teams right now. And
it's exactly like you said. We are seeing part of the problems of trading away so many picks and so many prospects over the years, because, look at what a lot of other teams do with their 3rd and 4th lines. A lot of times it's younger guys that are maybe not completely NHL ready, but they're about to be NHL ready, and they certainly have NHL value. And those are the guys that are filling up 3rd and 4th lines around the league in a lot of places. And Penguins, they're struggling with that because they haven't had the high picks to use on guys that would fit there. So we'll see how long this routine can last, basically.
Yeah, I think we're kind of coming to the end of it, unless they get, some big return on somebody, that they can get a decent 1st or 2nd round pick, that they can kind of start to stock up that depth in the system again. But right now, I think what it looks like is, okay, draft what we think is the best possible guy. And,
a defenseman.
Yeah, which is usually a defenseman, which is okay.
I have no problem with that. I think it's worked out fine.
Yeah, it's worked out great, actually, from what we've seen, and they're very tradable commodities. But it seems like they've really put an emphasis on these NCAA guys that are kind of undrafted, like a Magna, like a Gibbons, like they look for those free agent gems. But typically those aren't top 6 material. Those are bottom 6 material at best. And, they're not quite ready enough to handle that bottom 6 role, obviously, because the bottom 6 is a mess still. I love the idea of Kesler coming here, but I love it much more, if they're able to find a way to find a serviceable, at least one winger for that bottom 6 that is much better than what they've got right now. I think if you can get Kesler with a pretty decent sized guy there that's got some scoring, touch, and grit, I like that a lot better than just getting a guy like Kesler or getting even 2 wingers, because I love what Kesler could bring to this team. That being said, who knows really what the future holds? Who knows anything really right now? For all we know, Yager could come back tomorrow or something like that.
Don't let people start with that. Just don't even talk about Yager. People will go insane. Yager's not going anywhere. He said he was quoted as saying he's not going anywhere.
Well, yeah, he was quoted to say, okay, if I get traded, I'm just going to go home. If he got traded to Pittsburgh and went to the KHL, fans would just go ballistic. It would be end times. Something would burn in Pittsburgh.
I would laugh hysterically.
Oh my gosh, it would be awesome. It would be incredible. Well, we put out a call to all Armchair GMs earlier today, and you guys came through with kind of who you thought would kind of fit well here and what you would do, what adjustments you would make to this roster. You've heard Mish and I talk about it the entire show, kind of guys that we think would fit here and stuff like that. But here's kind of what you thought as well. Unless, Mish, anything else to add before we hit Armchair GM, I guess?
No, we can comment on what they say and we'll work from there.
Let's do that. Some of them are really outlandish. Put the question out there, what moves would you make if you're Ray Shiro for the trade deadline?
I like how you're calling their tweets outlandish when earlier I tweeted out I wanted to get Kesler and then trade him to Philly for Giroux and then trade Giroux to Nashville for Weber.
I love that, actually. If that would ever happen, that would be fantastic. All right. Mish, you might be a genius. That would be the most troll move ever from Shiro.
Oh, yeah.
Such a great move, too. So, all right. Here we go. Hunter tweeted, I'd grab Kesler and then get Hemsky. Yeah, that could work pretty well. I don't know how that really fits bottom six winger-wise, but at the same time, hey, you got someone for Sid to play with, and you got someone on that bottom six. Not too shabby. Brad mentioned Hemsky and Boys. He likes Kesler, but Vancouver is asking just too much. We need a lot of forward depth right now. I think he kind of is along the same lines as you, Ken. Or, Mish. You're not
wow,
Ken.
Ken. Ouch. That hurts.
I saw Hemsky, and that's all I think of is Ken because he salivates. Every time we go get a brew, Ken's always talking about Hemsky.
That's because we've all been talking about Hemsky for like half a decade at this point.
Seems like it. It might have. I mean, it might be 15 years now. Who knows? He's been in the league since he's been like 12. Andrew tweeted, no to Kesler, no to Hemsky. Loves the idea of Statsny for a young D, probably like a guy like Dupre or something, and Brad Boys for a pick. Statsny would look good here. I'm not so sure he'd want to do a third line center thing, but maybe.
Is he even being shopped? Actively shopped, I guess is what I should say.
I don't know. I mean, past couple years now we've heard rumors about Statsny being kind of trade commodities. I'm not so sold on that, but everybody's got a price.
Here's the fourth period blurb on Paul Stastny. We're inching closer to the trade deadline, which means more Paul Stastny trade rumors will pop up. This year, however, the Avalanche isn't likely to move him. He's a UFA this summer, so either way, this could be his last season in Colorado.
Yeah, and with Colorado still kind of in a playoff hunt and stuff, I'm not so sure they'd be willing to trade him unless they get a ridiculous return. So
I was going to say, I think you'd have to overpay to get him at this point.
Yeah, and I don't think that is the guy that is worth overpaying for, actually, right now. Especially,
yeah, if you're going to look at that, you might as well look at Kesler because you got the 2 years with it.
You got contract flexibility there. I don't think a guy like Stastny would be, watch, he'll trade for him tomorrow, but on Shiro's radar even right now. Joe tweeted us, plug up the third and fourth lines, maybe a winger for Sid. Not much there.
If we can find a way to do that, that's exactly the necessary plan, if you ask me.
That's what
Forget
do,
center,
right?
Just do that.
It is the right plan, yeah. I mean, Joe, good stuff there. Would love some names. Buck in for life. Follow him on Twitter. It's about baseball season, so yeah. P.A. Parento, Molson, Camilleri for Sid's line. I guess one of those three is what he was kind of looking for.
I'm okay with all three of them playing along with Sid.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. Put them all out there. Don't even need a defense at that point. And then he said any bottom six help he can get. Yeah, I'm not so picky right now on a bottom six as long as they kind of play an effective style. Right now, still no identity here for Pittsburgh. So any bottom six help. Yeah, and we're going to sign Moondog from Wheeling.
I don't even understand that reference.
No, some people might. All right, CSEV87 would love to just see something. Anything, if you can get two wingers for the price of a Kesler, then go for it. Kind of
I can get on board with that.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines as Brad earlier. kind of more depth-oriented than it is the 3-center model. Mooseberg would like to see Blake Wheeler if the Jets are selling. Hemsky and Toulouse for forwards also would be a good pick. And Andrew McDonald for the defense. That's an interesting name, and that's the first time we've seen really any defensemen out of all these Armchair GMs so far coming to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I meant to bring that up earlier. I think, did Rossi have it in his article? Someone tweeted out an article with it about how the Penguins, along with probably 20-plus teams, are all inquiring about him because he's a very cheap cap hit for this year. He's free agent after this year. Mm-hmm. But just because he's a cheap cap hit, and I guess most of the good teams, I think someone tweeted this out, some reporter, I can't think of who, someone tweeted out that most of the higher tier teams see McDonald as a good third pairing fit, essentially, a depth guy that they're willing to give a little bit up for, but most of them won't go after him in the offseason either. So because of that, it's keeping like his trade value down. And that would be an interesting one. I would love to see the defensive depth. Adam Gretz tweeted out a graph earlier of Scuderi's ice time and how that's been dropping. Wouldn't be shocked if the team wouldn't want to replace, or if they would want to replace, not replace Scuderi, but at least take up some of his minutes and Orpik's minutes the way both of them have been playing lately. So, I mean, I'd love to see McDonald, but the price would be very interesting, especially with so many people interested.
Yeah, and one of the best things about a guy like Andrew McDonald is he blocks a ton of shots. I think he leads the league, actually, right now in blocked shots. So that always is a great thing if you want to shell up in your own zone, block a lot of shots, and get the puck up to your forwards. I think Andrew McDonald would do a great job of that here. Not a lot of guys that tend to block shots here. I mean, Olli Mata's not a shot blocker. Matt Niskanen's not much of a shot blocker. Chris Letang, if he's back, isn't much of one. I don't think you can get too many of those guys, honestly. I think, if the price is right, McDonald makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, any type of player like that can move the puck as well is what we need in this system, basically. And I mean, that's the weird thing. Like, with Scuderi and Orpik, they're supposed to be solid, quote-unquote, defensive defensemen, but we really aren't seeing that anymore.
Yeah, and as we look towards the future, if he doesn't come here now, you do have the opportunity to sign him as a UFA this summer. Hopefully he comes in for a cheap cap hit because you're going to have some guys to replace possibly. I mean, who knows what the future holds for a guy like Matt Niskanen. It's probably likely around $4 to $5 million. But Brooks Orpik likely done here after the season, maybe sooner, who knows. But a guy like McDonald would do a great job, I think, fitting in there, and possibly much cheaper than those two guys too. Moving on down this list, Kevin G., another PA Parenzo, Hemsky, Fleischman, Boys, all targets. Sutter's not the problem. He's kind of adamant about that. That's all caps. And not worth Kesler, basically letting go of all these assets to get him. He also tweeted, Eric Cole would be a fantastic ad. He must have listened to Mike Colligan Thursday on the show. Can't imagine Dallas making the playoffs, and maybe they sell. Eric Cole could be an interesting fit here, especially with Brooks Orpik.
Well, if Cole knocks out Orpik to make up for that hit long ago, that could solve a problem on defense as well.
Oh my God, he's on the ice with a steel chair! Yeah, it would be. They hate each. Orpik doesn't hate Cole, but just that history. Cole just despises Orpik. I'm not so sure how that would fit here.
Cole's attitude in general, I've never been pleased with on the ice. But Orpik and Penguins aside, even anywhere else he's gone, he's never thrilled me as a locker room guy and just his overall attitude towards playing hockey. So for that reason, I wouldn't be the biggest fan. The drama would be fun, though.
Kevin also tweeted, okay, can't stop tweeting. Andrew Ladd, he said Parento and Boys and Fleischman again. Hemsky, Brian Little, snag a couple that require least in return. It's kind of the mold of not the 3-center model, but creating winger depth, which is kind of a not a giant shock really here. I mean, we're seeing that a lot.
Yeah, gets my votes.
Yep. Mark McLean tweeted us, St. Louis, Marty St. Louis, I guess, not the entire city of St. Louis.
Hey, getting St. Louis wouldn't be bad either.
Yeah, we'll take all of St. Louis. Now, Marty St. Louis for Simone Dupre, Sutter, and maybe a pick. Interesting.
St. Louis got to cost more than that, I imagine.
Yeah, I would assume so also. He still has a few years on him too, right?
Let's see. Keep talking. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I mean, as far as a guy that could play, yeah, there's not many out there better than a guy like St. Louis. Great assist guy, still playing at a high rate of hockey at 38 years old, Olympian. Saw him out in Sochi, but looking like a right winger. Potential for Sid probably would cost way too much, and I think he's making over $5 million a year.
Yeah, he's making 5.625. He still has a year left, and also there's that whole he's only willing to go to the Rangers thing.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. Maybe to play with Richards, but I'm not so sure New York needs to get any older.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't see St. Louis moving. I think he'll finish out with Tampa.
I kind of hope so. I mean, whenever you think of the guy, that's who you think of. I mean, you think of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, I mean, we live in that kind of age where not a lot of guys really finish their career with the team that they've been with their entire, career. So, we'll see. Hopefully he does end up in Tampa Bay still, but if not, I would just hate to see another big star go to the Rangers.
They'd be like the Rangers of old before the salary cap, where they just kept acquiring stars, hoping something would stick.
All right, Mabarak. I don't know how you even pronounce this guy's Twitter name. Pens have to get a goalie, barring a miraculous recovery by Vokun. Total denial of Fleury's last 4 playoffs with trade speculation. I'm not so sure you can pin all 4 of those years on Fleury. Plenty of other guys to share blame there. Does he deserve some blame? Yeah. And at the same time, I'm not so sure Vokun's that far off. I think it's not so much of a miracle for him to return. I think he likely will return.
Well, another question for you off of this is how comfortable would you feel with Zakov?
Not a ton. I mean, but if you have to rely on your backup goalie anyways.
Well, that's exactly where
we were
I was going
spoiled
with
last
this.
year.
If Fleury's going to fail, do you think Vokun can win this team the cup when he hasn't played all season?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if Fleury's going to fail and Vokun is out, or let's say he fails as well, is Zakov going to really win this team the cup? I mean, I think it's Fleury or bust, essentially. That's how I view it, at least. So, and I don't think any backup goalie is really going to change that, unless you're getting Halak from Buffalo now. But I don't really want to give anything up for that. So, I mean, I look at it as Fleury or bust.
And it is. And I think the biggest thing with Fleury isn't his durability. Here's a guy, luckily, who's played like pretty much every year injury free. But I mean, the thing
that
is
noise
was
you knocking on wood.
It totally was. It's fake wood, but it'll work. There's no real wood here. Wow. But I mean, the mental toughness and kind of being into the games has been the biggest thing, especially in the playoffs. We've seen, I think, a much different Marc-Andre Fleury this season than we have in the past few years, but we'll see. I mean, like you said, Mish, I think it's Fleury or bust here, and I don't think the backup's going to make that much of a difference here. All right, moving down the list here. Randy tweeted us. Interesting one here. Ryan O'Reilly, another Av. Or no, he's not an Av now, is he? He's Calgary.
No, he's an Av.
Is he an Av? Wait.
Remember Calgary tried to offer sheet him, and then Colorado matched, and then everyone found out he would have had to hit waivers, so Calgary would have been stupid anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan O'Reilly for Sutter, Dupre, or Dumoulin.
I imagine it would take a lot more than one of those on their own to get O'Reilly. Actually, not even imagine. I know for sure it would take more than one of those on their own. I don't see Colorado giving up O'Reilly. There's no reason for it. I'm sure he's going to get a long-term deal coming up.
Yeah, I'm sure he is too. Dupre does make a lot of sense in a way because they could use some defensemen. And, hey, why not a guy like Dupre or Dumoulin even? I mean, give him something of stature. If you throw in Sutter, likely sweetens the pot a bit, but I think it would probably still cost a little more there.
If you could do like Sutter and Dumoulin for O'Reilly, I'd gladly do it, but I just don't think that's even enough.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe for Cal, but not Ryan.
Cal better not cost any of those three players. Maybe Dupre after his Chicago performance.
Oh, God. Yeah, he didn't do himself any favors in that game. Jeez. Allie tweeted us what moves she would make. Probably the running man.
It's probably the best one to do for this playoff scenario.
Yeah. On skates would be great. The Pens Pond said, can we sign some Team Finland rookies on tryouts? What are your thoughts there, Mish?
I mean, I'm all for it. Let's sign all of Team Finland if we can.
Just shell down in front of Flower.
Every 19-year-old Finnish player should be signed immediately. That's all I've learned this year.
The interesting thing, though, is that they would have to pass waivers in order to do that and to sign those guys. So likely most of those guys wouldn't make their way all the way down to Pittsburgh. But, hey, I guess it's worth a shot.
Why not? I have one Twitter inbox. Should I call this my inbox? I don't know how this goes. One tweet to me from @RabidMutant. It is not about this year. They need to build for next year, which I kind of agree with. I don't think, and I never like retweeting empty netters because he annoys me half the time. But he made a great point, which is there's probably no one transaction, and maybe not even a bundle of transactions, that's going to make the Penguins an immediate Cup favorite. Too much cap issues, or too many injuries, too many cap issues. Everything we're looking for at the trade deadline might not be worth it in the long run.
See, man, I don't know. Like, I hate to think of any year as a lost year. I mean, I would rather reflect back on that and be like, wow, that was a bust of a year. 2012, awful bust of a year. Looking back, potentially it could have been a great year. Any year you have a guy like Malkin and sit on your team, especially when they're playing so well, I think you have a chance. I mean, you got just as good of a chance as anybody else, but I mean, you don't have to be a favorite to win it all. I mean, that's the beauty of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think anybody that can get in has a good chance, but I think some rosters obviously make it easier. Rosters like Chicago would be a dream to have, but if you don't have that, you got to outcoach them, outplay them, and you never know what really happens there. I'm just not ready to give up on a year and call it a lost year before it actually is. So I guess, I don't know. I don't think it's so much about next year. I think it is about this year because it has to be about this year. And is it about next year somewhat? Yeah, it definitely is. There's that fine line of balancing the present and the future. But, I mean, that's why they get paid the big bucks and we don't, though, I guess.
I think one interesting thing to look at / think about is look at last year. Last year was clearly Cup or bust for everyone. There's not a single person in Pittsburgh that wasn't thinking Cup or bust. And that's why this team made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and everyone was livid / upset about how everything ended, because this team should have been Cup or bust. If you look at it this year, at least with the team as constructed right now, if we lost in a 7-game series in the semifinals, I would be disappointed and upset as a fan, but I'd kind of be like, yeah, I could have seen that coming. Last year, I didn't see the Eastern Conference Final sweep coming at all. So I think it's interesting just from that standpoint. I don't expect this to be a Stanley Cup team right now.
I don't expect it either, but I'm not ready to say that they don't have a chance. I think they do have a chance.
And keep in mind, I'm not saying that either. This team could win the Stanley Cup because crazier things have happened. I mean, the Kings, obviously, in 2012 are an interesting story, so you never know. But at least where I'm placing expectations right now would be right on the edge of semifinals and conference finals.
Can't disagree with that, Mish. Can't disagree with that. One last one we have here is from Little Artie. Love that name, actually. Maybe that's Kevin Stevens' little kid. We'll see. Ryan Kesler is who he would like to see if the price was right. If they kept some of the salary, Drew Stafford can make a lot of sense too. I just don't see Buffalo trading a guy like Stafford. I think that he's the kind of guy that they definitely want to keep. But
here's
man,
the blurb on Stafford. I have the fourthperiod.com. I have their trade tracker up now. The blurb on Stafford is, the Sabres wouldn't mind trading Stafford in his $4 million cap hit, but they haven't had much luck to this point. His name popped up in trade talks last season, will continue to pop up this year. So, possibly available, but I wonder what the asking price would be.
It'd be interesting to see. I mean, I'd be all aboard the Stafford train, but
he still has a year left. He makes $4 million, and he's only 28. And all of that to me just says the price goes higher on him. Yeah,
I mean, former 30-goal scorer, scored 30 goals a couple years back, or 31 a couple years back. You said 28. 10 goals and 14 assists this year. That's not bad numbers on an awful team. So, who knows? Maybe we see Drew Stafford. That would shock a lot of people. I doubt it, but it would definitely be a shock. All right. Well, Mish, happy trade deadline day. And not day, but week. But it's going to be an interesting next couple days.
Yeah, I will be happy when trade deadline day is over, because I feel like I can't walk away from Twitter ever until this is over.
Have you put the notifications on for guys like McKenzie and Drager yet?
No, I usually set them up for text messages, but what I've done this year is my second monitor is now just TweetDeck the whole time. So just keeping an eye on that constantly.
All right, well, that's going to do it. For Mish, I'm Nick, and we're out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.